Community Champion Hour, sponsored by the Ray Hodges Financial Group. I would like to say hello to all of those people that are listening in to us during the second half of the Community Champion Hour. The first half hour, we had Ray Hodges talking about cryptocurrency. Let me go ahead and get a disclaimer. Don't say I told you to go out there and buy cryptocurrency, because I didn't. Facebook, make sure you record this. Do not turn this thing off. Make sure you save it in the archive, Facebook. I didn't tell them. But what I did tell them to do was support DeAndre and Gray, helping us help her. It's a journey to success. They had their annual 5K walk and run-a-thon today at Mike Lewis Park, and we were one of the sponsors to that, the Commish Radio Show brand. We were one of the sponsors to that. So we would like to go ahead and send a hello to the people who participated in that noble event. Speaking of being noble, we have Reverend Michael Bell. Man, how you been? Man?
Listen, I'm battling and bruising. It's good to be on your show. Heard a lot about it, and just glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad you are here, man. You look like kin folks to me. When you came in, I looked at you, I said, brother, look for me. You know, I see you on TV. Anytime they have you on TV, yes, they're always showing you as the black militant guy and everything, you know. But when I saw you, I said, this is kin folk right here. This is it, man. This is it. Where you from?
I'm from East Texas. I grew up in Fort Worth.
Really?
Yes, grew up in Fort Worth, and as a matter of fact, graduated Kirkpatrick High School back in the day, and went to Wiley College and graduated there, and went to Howard University Divinity School. Everybody heard of Howard Thurman. I was a Howard Thurman fellow. He paid for my education.
Right.
And then went to University of Texas at Tyler, graduated there, and then went to Interdenominational Theological Center in Morehouse and got my doctorate.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Atlanta, Georgia.
ATL.
Yes, sir. And came back here. Came back here?
Yes, sir. To wake people up.
Yeah, you know, literally. I had, you know how when you're younger, you have visions of Sugar Plum dancing in your head, and right, you think that by the time if you come and you try and help provide a spark, that people will wake up. You know, I noted early on that there was no civil rights movement of note in Texas. There was one, in Alabama and Georgia, Mississippi, everybody else, but not in Texas.
Why do you think that happened?
I think it's because of the mentality. I think there's a whole segment of our community across the state, because we do work across the state. When I say we, I'm talking about the local organized committee. We do work across the state. And there's just a feeling of giving up, of hopelessness. As a matter of fact, we've run into people, our people, African Americans, who have said, hey, what are you doing this for? Whenever we do something, why are you doing that? It's not going to, the end result is not going to be positive. And it's out of fear. I think there's a lot of fear and a lot of apprehension and just an attitude of hopelessness that permeates our community, and that's unfortunate.
How do we change that?
Well, there are several ways. I'm a person of faith. As a matter of fact, Heaven 97, we've had a relationship with them for about 20 years. And I pastor a church, Greater St. Stephen First Church in Fort Worth, Texas. Wonderful people. And what we do is we just teach the truth. We change it a little bit at a time, kind of like eating the elephant, one bite at a time, step by step, chipping away. And so just by getting information out there as much as we possibly can, providing opportunities. Recently, I don't know if, I'm sure the listeners have heard, and you've heard, I know you've heard of Uhuru Academy. Our church opened our doors to Uhuru Academy for a year, no fees or anything, so that they can come, because we knew they have a great mission, and that is educating our children and just providing opportunities, getting as much word out there as possible. This morning, every Saturday, I'm on the radio with Commissioner Lester Gibson out of Waco, Texas, at 10 o'clock there.
And where can
in
we listen to
McLennan
that?
County.
Where can we listen to that?
It's on KJTX,
Okay.
104.5 FM.
Okay.
There in Waco. No, wait, hold on. That's the other station. This is 94.5 FM. That's one of our other stations. But 94.5 FM is called The Beat, Central Texas. The Beat. I think it's KBTX, something like that. I forget the call letters right now, but it's 94.5 The Beat, out of Waco, Texas, and I'm on there every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. With Commissioner Lester Gibson and his wife Coquie and others there, and a community community focused show, and then just trying to get information out that way, and on our other broadcasts in Arkansas, Louisiana, and as well as here in Texas, and write a column for called the Leader's Edge for a couple of free African American newspapers. One is Church and Magazine, and the other I do is called the African American Griot,
Okay.
and so forth. So kind of doing that, but especially for churching, and then blogging, and
Most important,
yes.
when do you sleep?
You know what? You know what the real truth is that I get enough rest. You know how you habit yourself. You kind of
Because your
train
schedule
yourself.
remind me of mine.
You kind of train you.
Right.
Well, you know about 4 hours.
Right.
About 4 hours.
Right. You go to sleep when you get tired.
About 4
Right.
hours, and then you do those power naps.
Right.
About 7-minute naps and so
Yep, done
forth
that
throughout the day.
Yep.
So, and you end up being pretty fresh. But it's a lot to do, and we have a short time to do
That's it. That's it.
A lot to do, and we
That's
have
it.
to, whatever impact we're going to make, we're going to have to make that impact, and we're going to have to give our energy to it. And especially when it comes to helping our communities, it's so very important. I'm with a group of people called the Local Organizing Committee, and we're downtown Fort Worth even now. Every day, Monday through Friday, protesting down in downtown Fort Worth. And,
What are you protesting?
well, on December 21st, 2016, the Jackie Craig assault by the Fort Worth police, William Martin, and all that happened, the aftermath, everything that happened, because the city of Fort Worth continued to make one mistake after another, including the persecution of Abdul Pridgen, who, by the way, is about to be sworn in as police chief in Seaside, California.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, I think it's going to be May 31st. He's police chief there. He's going to be sworn in, and that's good news. And then Vance Keys, who's a great guy, who's still on the police force, Captain Vance Keys, did just a kind of scapegoating that took place, and just piling on, going all the way back. Michael Jacobs, who was tased to death by Fort Worth police. Gregory Adams, who was shot unarmed. Ra Thomas, unarmed, shot. Just a whole list of people who've been either assaulted, shot. Dorsey Morris, who in December of 2017 was tased and assaulted by Fort Worth police, who his name Sergeant Pierce, the one who commanded the scene, was fired. So it's just one thing after another, and after after that compounding of all that went on, we went through all of the LOC, we went through all of the procedures and policies, and the process.
Right.
We jumped through all of the hoops, we crossed the T's, dotted the I's, and we found out that after the 3E program, which I'm a co-author of, 3E program that deals with community and police relationships. After the
You said 3E program?
the 3E is called the 3E plan.
3E, what is it?
It deals basically with how the police department ought to relate to the community. Also, how the police department act internally. Back in 2014, the Black Police Officers Association, led by Dr. Shabir, and the Latino Police Officers Association, led by Nestor Martinez, came to me and said, we're having problems. Now, they have badges and all of that and guns. They said, we're having problems within our own police department, and we need help.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
They came to you.
Yes, sir.
Because they have problems in their own police
Yes, sir.
department?
Absolutely.
Internally?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, not only did the following presidents, President Roy Hudson, President Dalco of the BPOA, the Black Police Officers Association, they followed suit. The part of the 3E program deals with internal affairs in the police department.
Now, when we see in the press, they meaning the media.
Sure.
When they have a protest, when you have a protest,
Yes, sir.
you're pictured, they put that camera straight on you.
Yes, sir.
And they have you pictured as a black militant.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But yet the police department comes to you
Yes, sir.
to help mediate problems they have.
Exactly.
And okay, I just want to make sure that everyone's understanding.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the way they want to portray me. I'm an activist, really a church activist. I'm concerned that the church be the church. And so I'm really a church activist. I don't think the church is doing what it should be doing, ought to be doing, especially in this area. I think I mentioned that a little bit before we came on air to this segment. What happens is that the church has a responsibility to the community. It really does. It has a responsibility to the community. And unfortunately, the church is not doing all the church has been capacitated and commissioned to do. And so what we do is we try to get the truth out, try to get the church involved as it has been historically. If you look back in our history, look in the rearview mirror, you'll see historically how significant and impactful the church has been, the church community. And so they want a picture so that people can be put off and repulsed by, they're repulsed by certain labels.
Right.
And so it's easy to label somebody. We went through, the police came to me, to my church, and said, hey, we want your help. And this is all documented in the 3E plan. What the chief ought to be doing, what the police department ought to be doing. And that was a report that followed that the city, first of all, the city embraced the 3E plan. Secondly, there's a report that followed on the heels of that. That was a Coleman report that the city commissioned that said that the police department has internal problems as far as discrimination. They call it now by different kinds of names. They don't no longer say racism. Right. They say implicit bias.
Right.
And all of those names.
I call it a big fancy SMU word.
Exactly.
Implicit bias.
And then they had a National League of Cities. The National League of Cities came through and said, hey, Fort Worth is in trouble. And then most recently, this month, on May the 1st, they set up a task force on race and culture that was set up because of the protests downtown. We've been down there a year this month. And they set up a task force on race and culture. The task force on race and culture concluded that Fort Worth, these are their words, that Fort Worth, racism in Fort Worth, structural, systemic, and institutional. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of that task force, and that task force is multicultural, interracial, and they unanimously came to that conclusion. We knew that.
So what you're saying to me is there wasn't a bunch of black folks saying that the system was racist.
Right.
It was multicultural people who had independent minds.
Right.
Were saying that.
Exactly.
So it wasn't just a black thing.
No.
Because normally when we,
right.
meaning black
You're exactly
people,
right.
We say something's racist. They say you people always say it's racist. So it wasn't we,
right.
You people. It was we. The people.
Exactly. There were Anglo Americans.
We the people.
Just a whole different. The entire of every stripe, and they unanimously came to the conclusion, and it was all printed in everywhere that in Fort Worth that racism is structural, systemic, and institutional. We knew that, and we have tried to communicate this to our community. Now you don't have to be afraid you know, because of the fact that this is the conclusion of a multicultural group that's saying the same thing we're saying. So no longer can they say, you people are always whining about racism. You're always crying about racism. And what you need to do is to pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. All that kind of.
Well, it's easy to tell someone to pick themselves up by their own bootstraps. But, you know, you have to have a boot in order to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, in Dallas, where I'm from, it's always a perception that people in Fort Worth are behind times. And I know that's obviously not true, because the hell that we catch in Dallas just doesn't stop at the border. You have an organization you're a member of a protest, shall I say, that's been going on for a year. How long do you foresee this happening?
We plan on staying the course until we must have a community, a citizens review board. We must have that. They don't have. Fort Worth is the only major city that hasn't even tried it.
We have one in Dallas, but it doesn't work.
Well, we don't even have
one that not work. Okay.
You know, the thing in Fort Worth is that in the conclusion of the task force, by the way, is that one of the in the interim report made on May 1st this month is that we need a community, a citizens review board. Also, that Jackie Craig and her family be treated justly. They're still persecuting that woman. That sister's being persecuted on a daily basis. So is Vance Keys. And what we've done, Dr. Gray, is that what we've done so often is that something happens, and social psychologists say this, something happens, and then we get upset, and then they throw us a bone, and then we reach a new level of stabilization, and then we go back into this deep freeze, this refreezing, and then until something else happens. Well, that cycle is going to eventually. That cycle means that our grandchildren, our posterity, are going to have to deal with the same issues. 50 years later, after all of the civil rights acts and all of those, we still, over 50 years later, we're still dealing with the same issues. And I don't want our grandchildren, and our children and great-grandchildren to continue to have to fight the same battles. At some point, we need to fight a battle and say, we fought it to the end. And this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing that. After years and years of getting upset, having a big rally, everybody's being upset, venting, and then going home until the next traumatic event, until the next police shooting, beating. Then, rather than doing that, let's break the cycle. Let's get something accomplished. And so we set out, everybody joined together, and we set out, hey, we're going to get this accomplished. Well, the LOC said, listen, we're not going to continue to do the same, we're going to break that cycle. We're going to stay with something until we get results. We're not going to make demands and then those demands over time dissipate. What we're going to do is we're going to make demands. They ask us all the time, what is it that you all want, and so forth. And we tell them these are the things. We have it written down. We've done all of our work. We've done all of our research and so forth. As a matter of fact, our group is the one who stopped racetracking in Fort Worth. We protested 6 years. 6 years, from 96 to 2002, to stop racetracking in Fort Worth. Because it was killing our children. We've decided on this issue to stay with it rather than to wait for something else to happen, and then everybody gets upset, and then we go back to sleep again. What we are going to have to do is stay the course, and that's what this is about.
Staying the course is what this is about. Now, how do we keep our people from getting off course? And there's a lot of ailments in our community,
yes, sir.
And among them is K2, crack,
exactly.
Cocaine, all that.
You're exactly right. You know what we've come to the conclusion we have to come to is that the LOC has come to the conclusion that what we're going to do is focus on this. You're exactly right. We have a myriad of problems and issues, in our community that need addressing. It's 911 across our community. It's 911. It's an emergency across our community when you deal with how your children are doing in school and testing and how health issues that our families have, and the distrust between the medical community and our communities, poor prenatal care, poor or no prenatal care.
And let me add to your point on that, the prenatal care. We operate in Fort Worth, in Dallas-Fort Worth, as if we are a third world country.
You know what? That's been said. The guy that was pastor of a church across town in Fort Worth, his name was Steve Shoemaker. He was pastor of Broadway Baptist Church. And Anglo pastor, he came, and you know what he said? He said when he crossed 35, when you go, 35 runs in 35 West in Fort Worth, runs north and south, as you know. When you cross 35 on East Berry Street, he said it's like going to a third world country. You're exactly right. And you didn't even hear of you on point. You're on point. It's like that, and yet we have these elected officials. We don't hold them accountable. We don't hold them accountable. It's just really, and I say this all the time. What I'm doing here and what we're doing here is not unusual. If I go to Baltimore, Maryland, I go to Pittsburgh, I go to different places, and when I go there, this normative is only here because there's a hopelessness has forget about a toehold, has just come in and just sat down in the midst of our community. You mentioned Dallas. There are people in Dallas, Commissioner John Wiley Price, who I consider a friend, came over and said that Fort Worth is the Aunt Jemima capital. These are his words of the world, and he said because the seemingly satisfaction or the acceptance of whatever is wrong, just accepting that's whatever rut we're in, that's normal. And so rather than fighting and pushing back, when you have people who've been beat down so many times, and then unfortunately you have members of the faith community, and I've taken my brothers and sisters to task on this. I teach at Bright Divinity School at TCU. I've been adjunct professor for 12 years now. And the thing is that I've taken them to task on the fact that really, when we talk about, you mentioned faith, when we talk about what the church ought to do, Jesus embraced a theology of radical involvement.
All right. As we go to a close,
Sure.
we're into about the last 5 minutes of the show, but you mentioned Jesus' black liberation theology.
Right.
This is good because the passing of Reverend James Cone just happened this past month. Could you give the listeners a version of, shall I say, your synopsis of the black liberation theology?
I met Dr. James Cone back when I was in school at Howard. And then when I was chair of the Black Church Studies Advisory Board at Bright, I brought Dr. Cone here. And so I knew him fairly well. Also, J.D. Ellis Roberts is another father of black liberation theology. He was my teacher and mentor, and as well as others who embrace that. What we do is that we believe that it's God's will and God's intent that we all be free. That we all be free, and as Dr. Cone said, the issue is that we've said and we've heard people say that the religion of Christ is a white man's religion. We've heard that, but they haven't read their history. A lot. As a matter of fact, when we let me say it this way: when we read about what Socrates said, Plotinus and others, all of those philosophers of the West. When we read about what they say, we don't understand that they took a lot of that knowledge from Egypt and from Alexandria and from Africa, and they took a lot of that knowledge, and then it's like Elvis Presley saying, "Ain't nothing like a hound, but ain't nothing but a hound dog," and that wasn't his song.
Right.
You know, a lot of them they took those songs and they made it their song, and we think that, hey, you know what, they came out with that song. That's not true. And so the same thing is when we talk about this, we teach that people that it's God's intent that people recognize, realize their potential, and that they maximize their potential. That culture is the one who puts this color prejudice on us. It's not what God's intent is. And so what we do is that every Sunday we have black, and at my church we have Black History observance, 52 Sundays a year, 52 Sundays a year. And and that, but it's not abnormal in other places, okay? And I got it from when I was in Atlanta, Georgia, because that's what they did in Atlanta, Georgia, every Sunday, Black History observance. So the thing is that we teach people to love themselves and to love who they are and who God created them to be.
When is your church service?
Excuse me. My church service is every Sunday at we have empowerment worship service at 10. And we have 10 o'clock from 10 till about 11:45, and then in the evenings we do something we have evening worship, which we call Sunday Night Live, from 6:30 until 7:30 every Sunday.
And what street is it on?
3728 East Berry Street, on the corner of Sydney at East Berry, in the heart of Southeast Fort Worth, Texas.
Southeast Fort Worth. This is the Community Champion Hour show. I appreciate
Brother, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for what you're doing to make a difference.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for being a difference maker.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
And for you guys that are listening to Heaven 97, we will be back here live the third Saturday of the month. And you can catch us obviously on Inside Texas Politics, 9 on 8. Catch us there, and also Fishbowl Radio Network from 1 to 3 on Saturdays. Commish Radio Show, and also we are winding up and winding down. I think if my passport is ready, I think I'm ready to go over to Southeast Fort Worth. But hey, let's be optimistic, and we'll see you guys later. Let's go. Cut.